Welcome back to our special coverage. Still taking a look at developments out of Ukraine today. The regional governor for Mariupol, Pavlo Krylenko, says more civilians are leaving the city today. He said so on Telegram this morning, as efforts have been supported by the United Nations and Red Cross, and some buses, he said, have already left the city today. He also says civilians are being evacuated to Ukrainian-controlled Zaporizhzhia from the Azov region. It's not clear, though, whether the evacuees had been sheltering inside the vast Azovstal steel plant, from which a group of people was finally evacuated on Sunday. Now, more now on the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the Ukrainian parliament on Tuesday. He said the West made a mistake in not helping Ukraine in 2014 when Russia annexed the country's Crimea Peninsula. He was quoted as saying, "We who are your friends must be humble about what happened in 2014 because Ukraine was invaded for the first time when Crimea was taken from Ukraine and the war in Donbass. We cannot make the mistake again," he said. He also announced a donation military aid of £300 million to Ukraine over the next few weeks for military weapons, as well as to support the government in the country. Now, Britain's ambassador to Ukraine spoke about shock upon shock on the road back to Kyiv yesterday as she and her staff returned to the Ukrainian capital. Ambassador Melinda Simmons described seeing bombed-out playgrounds, schools and hospitals while driving through Kyiv region on the way to the city. She was appointed ambassador to Ukraine in 2019. She also talks about the personal experience of returning to the country, describing it as incredibly emotional and meaning an enormous amount. Simmons went on to say the UK and Ukraine were already working together to investigate allegations of war crimes in the country. Countries evacuated diplomatic staff before the outset of the war in February as troops launched a campaign towards the capital from the north. Russia withdrew troops from the north of Ukraine in early April.
Ukraine before this invasion. Well, we drove through that, of course, because if you take the car, you come, into Kiev Oblast, then you can see just how hard Russia tried to take Kiev, and also just how quickly the focus became on hitting civilians and attacking civilians. And that is shock upon shock. We passed, bombed out playgrounds, bombed out schools, hospitals, burned out trees, twisted metal in farmland. So obvious, really, that right from the beginning, this was about hitting the Ukrainian nation. It wasn't just about taking out the military capability. I think that speaks to their inability to understand how Ukrainians value their nationhood. This is Ukrainians defending themselves against an invasion so that they can live peacefully. There's nothing more than that.
Do you think there will be justice for...
U.S. President Joe Biden was at the Alabama Lockheed plant on Tuesday, making a case for his $33 billion Ukraine aid package. The Lockheed Martin co-facility manufactures the anti-tank Javelin missile, putting the spotlight on a weapon that has helped Ukraine fight Russia's invasion. President Biden used the visit to press Congress to approve his proposed $33 billion assistance package for Ukraine, including more than $20 billion in military aid. Our aid to Ukraine has not been a subject of the usual partisan bickering among lawmakers, but $20 billion is a huge jump, and any legislative proposal can fall victim to political polarization in Washington. President Biden, who is a Democrat, has written the state with his back Republican presidential candidates for decades to avoid that outcome. The U.S. has rushed to $3.4 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine since Russia invaded on February 24, including howitzers, anti-aircraft Stinger systems, javelins, ammunition, and body armor.
We know that the United States is leading our allies and partners around the world to make sure the courageous Ukrainians who are fighting for the future of their nation have the weapons and the capacity and ammunition and equipment to defend themselves against Putin's brutal war. A lot of war crimes being committed. But what we don't always see, is the work that that makes so much of this possible. And that's you. It's not hyperbole, it's you. You're making a gigantic difference for these poor sons of guns who are under such enormous pressure and firepower. Those javelins I saw, there's 10 for every tank that there is in Ukraine right now. You're changing people's lives. We built the weapons. No, you really did. Last week, I sent Congress, if you excuse the point of personal privilege, talking like an old senator, but sent a supplemental budget, a fancy way of saying we need more money, to make sure the United States can continue to send weapons directly to the front lines of freedom in Ukraine, and to continue to provide economic and humanitarian assistance to help the Ukrainian people. And I urge the Congress to pass this funding quickly to help Ukraine continue to succeed against Russian aggression, just as they did when they won the Battle of Kyiv. And to make sure the United States and our allies can replenish our own stocks of weapons to replace what we've sent to Ukraine. As I said from the beginning, this fight is not going to be cheap. But caving to aggression would even be more costly. We either back the Ukrainian people as they defend their country, or we stand by as Russia continues its atrocities and aggression. There was rosy derivative action.
U.S. President Joe Biden. I have joining me now Dr. Sylvester Kerry. He's a security and trade consultant on Africa, founder and president, Strategic Groups USA and United People for African Congress. Thank you, Dr. Kerry, for joining me on the program this morning. I know it's pretty early where you are, so I do appreciate the sacrifice. And I know you've heard your president talk about, how much is going into Ukraine. He's asking for $33 billion, an aid package in, I think it's under the new Lend and Lease Act. He wants, Congress to approve. What do you make of this huge amounts, despite all the other billions of dollars that have gone into military donations and military aid to Ukraine so far?
First of all, thank you for having me, and my prayer goes out for those in Ukraine and the surrounding areas that are going through this pain. And again, this war shouldn't have taken place, but that's what happens when there is weak leadership. And all he does is spend and spend. There are a lot of problems in the country that is not taken into account. Sometimes people think that showing strong leadership is by inciting wars or doing things just to please people around. This was Biden who went to, who met with President Putin in 2021 June, and he failed to address this issue. And on July, after a month, President Putin released a statement indicating his view about the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. At this time, President Biden should have arrested the situation. But now what he's doing is to observe and make comments and throw money around. So, but there are a lot of people, a lot of homeless people, a lot of veterans that are going through pain in this country. The people in Ukraine shouldn't have gotten to this situation. It's true that Russia is really destroying Ukraine, but at the same time, Russia is not gaining, and itself, the reputation is no longer what we think. You see, sometimes people who always think that Russia is everybody gets scared of Russia. See what is happening, how Ukraine is taking them by surprise. So President Biden has failed in this area, and what gave Ukraine this kind of impetus is the way America pulled out, or the way Biden pulled out from Afghanistan. At that moment, these guys have seen this is what we can do, because this guy, America is not going to fight us. America is not going to resist us. And again, if America is not in this war, fighting this war, the world is not safe. You can't fight from the side. You can't be throwing money around. You need to go there so that the world can feel, like we have a leader leading us.
If I'm understanding what you're saying, America needs to put boots on the ground in Ukraine?
America, well, of course, we shouldn't have gone there, but you can't fight from the side. You can't be throwing stone here and there. You either get in and get out and prevent this war. There's a way you can do it. And first of all, it shouldn't have taken place. Look at President Trump. He was building peace all around. Throughout how many wars did he fight? None. He was returning the soldiers. And this is what a Democrat administration does. And the worst part of it is that they think that they know what you need, what you want in your country or in your home more than you yourself. Remember the time of President Goodluck Jonathan? That was exactly what Obama did. When Jonathan needed some warplane, he needed equipment to fight Boko Haram. What did President Obama did? Now, even the Polish generals wanted to offer to send airplanes to German military base in Germany. Biden resisted. He thinks he knows what the Ukrainians need more than the Ukrainians themselves. He thinks his generals know what the Ukrainian generals need. So at this time, it would be nice for America to get in and get out and stop this thing going on.
But you know that is exactly what the Russian President Vladimir Putin wants. And if America or any other country were to officially send boots on the ground in Ukraine, you've automatically declared a world war, because to the Russian government, this is a declaration of war. Other countries been involved in this. President Putin has said, he really does not appreciate, the donations, the military donations that have been made to Ukraine, and he wants these Western countries to stop sending those military donations to Ukraine, as they are already aggravating an already serious situation. You think that's a wise move to be directly involved in this war, which is clearly between Russia and Ukraine?
The fact is that the war shouldn't have taken place, but as it is right now, if there is any remedy, because how long are you going to be throwing money? Lives are going, people are dying, kids, people are, children, schools, women, everybody dying. So how long are you going to be throwing money? Will the money solve it? And actually, we know that indirectly, it's not just Ukraine fighting the war. Ukraine, do we think that they are more sophisticated that way to handle or tackle Russia? We know that at least they are getting a lot of support, but thank God for the Polish government really backing them and supporting them strongly. But I don't think throwing money going to solve the problem alone, because somebody has to get in there and stop it.
Well, I know that, that there are some, U.S. veterans who are on the ground who are helping Ukrainian soldiers either in training or they're equally fighting the war, but that's on unofficial level, because they were not sent by the U.S. government. But as to, the military, the monies you're talking about, they're going into purchase of weapons. And I do understand your point, as to, whether these Ukrainian soldiers are able to handle those weapons. But you talk about, what will stop this war. What suggestions do you have, apart from, the diplomatic avenues that have been explored, as well as the military and humanitarian?
What is the role of NATO right there? Because all we're hearing, and as the war is going, there's massive propaganda. No one knows what is true and what is not. But this is the time to empower NATO to get in there. When I say get in, doesn't mean America alone getting in there, but at least empower NATO. They need to have a concerted decision that we are going into solve this problem and stop it once and for all. No matter what, you can throw money as much as you want. This is going to linger. It's just like the fight for Osama bin Laden that lingered for several years. So decision has to be taken. Boots has to be on the ground systematically and strategically and stop the war.
So some analysts have traced, the reason why this war is already in existence to the fact that Ukraine wants to join NATO, or wanted to join NATO. Now they've accepted being neutral, but they wanted to join NATO, and they also wanted to join the European Union, which is why Russia is invading Ukraine, because they say this is a special military operation, and this is to denazify Ukraine in the end. So where really is the role of NATO that you're asking? NATO is the main reason why this war exists in Ukraine already.
And that's the biggest mistake that Ukraine has made, and I think they've learned their lesson. I wonder what America would do if Mexico decide today that they want to join NATO.
Sorry, but you're asking NATO to get involved in Ukraine already. You're saying that that's one of the solutions to this war, but that's one of the reasons why this war exists in the first place.
Well, the role of NATO is to fight this kind of war, to defend countries, not just America going alone. That's why I made that comment. Instead of America, because if America get in now, the whole world going to say America is fighting, but regardless, it has to go And the reason NATO exists is this kind of situation. Even though it's because of NATO that this is happening, what we understand is because Ukraine wanted to join NATO, which they shouldn't have. And that's that statement that Putin made, I think, on July 12th, his intention and what he thinks is the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. So NATO has to play their role and play it strategically. Dodging is not the answer, just like Germany have been playing hide and seek and other countries playing hide and seek. So are we going to just leave it and be throwing money? No. Only Polish government has taken a lot of, massive help on that. Over 60% of the refugees are being harbored by the Polish government. But the rest of the country under NATO need to get involved.
Again, I ask, what would be the solution to ending this war in Ukraine? Because President Putin says he's got a plan that he must follow through. He's asked Western nations to stop military donations. He's asked them to stop helping Ukraine, as it's only making matters worse. So in your opinion, what would help to stop this war?
In every war, there is always a solution, and that solution is peace. But it takes it. That's what I'm really surprised. Someone like Joe Biden, who paraded himself as the Methuselah in politics, who believed that he knows foreign policy more than every other person, and believed that he knows diplomacy more than every other person. See what he did in Afghanistan. See what is going on right now. And that tells you that this administration has failed, not just America, they have failed the world. And actually, that is what democratic leadership knows very well to do. And their power is just propaganda. They can use propaganda to make the world think that everything is okay. But at this moment, in my own opinion, from what we see, no amount of money is going to stop it. An adult is going to rise up there and stop this, either by peaceful negotiation. And that's the reason I refer to the former president, my best president. Throughout his tenure, there was no single war. And this wouldn't have happened under President Trump. The whole world knows that. Biden knows that. Democrat knows that this would never have taken place under President Donald J. Trump. So what are his strategies? How did he negotiate peace around the Middle East? So why is it that everything that was built, Biden is destroying it? Every good thing that was built, not only President Trump, even the previous administration, Biden is destroying it. All he do is talk. And I wonder how people were so blind to elect such a lifeless, belligerent old man to come and rule the country, who doesn't know what he is doing. See what he did in Afghanistan. And that is what made President Putin to say, you know what, I'm going to jump in. And very soon, China will try their own.
So, we're talking about, solutions. I'm still yet to hear the solutions that you're providing, to ending this war, apart from lambasting the U.S. president and, propping up the previous president, Donald Trump, who you said had a peaceful time. But you do understand the United States did come out of a war in Afghanistan, which was fought for over 20 years. And I do understand the government really is not keen on taking on another war. But if you're looking at the way President Volodymyr Zelensky has been handling this crisis all along, what do you make of his strategy towards Russia since the start of this invasion?
Both the Russian administration, the U.S. administration, and the world leaders, I believe they know what they are doing. This can be stopped. This can be stopped if really they want to do that.
How?
But I don't think
how can it be stopped?
And if peaceful is ceasefire, first of all, make sure that both sides understand that and obey that and get in, not inciting one side, not trying to provoke one side. We know that Russia has made a mistake. We can call him a crazy man, whatever we want to call him, but we need to go on a peaceful solution. United Nations, NATO, American government, everyone needs to step in and stop that. People are dying. No amount of negotiation, no amount of debate, no amount of money pouring over that region will stop that if we keep doing what we're doing. We need to go on a peaceful solution. This is a war that could have been averted if we have a leader that knows what he's doing.
You talk about a peaceful solution, and President Vladimir Putin has, well, his first request was that Ukraine, of course, calls off its intentions to join NATO and the European Union. President Zelensky, in the course of this war, did say Ukraine will eventually remain neutral, but Russia continues with this invasion and continues, with this assault on Ukraine, and it's been difficult getting back to the negotiation table for weeks now, despite, Ukraine's willingness to finally end this war. It was only over the weekend that a ceasefire was finally called, thanks to the UN and to the Red Cross, were able to get people out of the city of Mariupol. You're talking about negotiations. How do we get there? How do we get back to the negotiating table? I think which is what probably Ukraine and, the rest of the world is asking at this time, with President Putin digging in his heels and refusing to move on what he wants out of this war.
I always believe that every madman has a friend. No matter how difficult Putin may be, no matter how dangerous he is, there is still a situation. There is still a way to negotiate that and stop it. And also, you can't be negotiating if you are inciting the other side. So you anger him. And I think that is what makes him, if a peaceful peace negotiation is called and he breaks that, well, the whole aspect of the region has to be calm and let him call everyone to order and have a way to get in there. And I think the United Nations and NATO can solve it.
Let's look at the sanctions that have been placed on Russia, and there are thousands of them already on the Russian government. So now Russia's striking back, with the payment for gas with ruble, and European countries trying to kick back against that as well. What do you make of that?
But I think that's also one of the reasons he's doing, because he knows he got the region on his palm. He knows what his country can offer. He might be mad, he might be crazy, but I like leaders who stand up, who take action, but not in a useless or wicked way this way. But he knows that no matter what, the East European nations depend on him on the side of oil and some other mineral resources that they get from Ukraine. And if the United Nations, the NATO, and American government will listen to him, hear him out, and call both to the table, I think the war will be over. I remember when Trump was coming in, everyone was saying, oh, Ukraine, Putin and Trump cannot rule together. Putin and Trump and what's his name? North Korea cannot. It takes a leader to lead, not just politics. The time for politics is not in this war. And the world needs to understand that, the leader needs to understand that. The problem is that we have a leader that is clueless. If he knows what he's doing after 50 years in politics and in diplomacy, he can solve this problem than inciting or fighting from behind.
Dr. Sylvester Kerry, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining me this morning.
You're welcome. God bless.